Today, we're exploring the dark side of nature with 7 terrifying stories about camping trips gone horribly wrong. Prepare to hear chilling accounts of outdoor trips that turned into nightmares, eerie encounters in isolated forests, and disturbing events that happened when the campfires went out. So sit back, make sure all the doors are locked, and let's begin this spine-chilling journey. Oh, and before any forest creature appears, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and leave your like. This really helps the channel and ensures you don't miss out on any terrifying content like this. Let's go. Trail of No Return Jason, a 34-year-old experienced trail guide, had organized the expedition for 4 friends. Siblings Ethan and Sarah, Collins, photographer Mark Winters, and resident Dr. Rebecca Chen. The group was planning a 5-day hike along the remote Ho River Trail, known for its dense temperate rainforest and stunning views. "We were all experienced," Jason later reported. "We followed all protocols. We recorded our itinerary with the rangers. We carried emergency equipment, topographic maps, and GPS." On the first day, September 17th, the walk went smoothly. The group advanced 12 kilometers along the main trail, setting up camp near the river as planned. Jason, following standard practices, marked key points with colored tape to make navigation easier if they needed to return quickly. The next morning, something strange caught Jason's attention. All the tapes he had loaded the day before were gone. Initially, he attributed the incident to wild animals or the strong night wind. "We redid the markings and continued," he explained. "It was only when we reached a major fork that I realized something was really wrong. The directional sign at the fork had been rotated, pointing in the opposite direction. If it weren't for Jason's GPS, the group would have followed a dangerous, unmapped trail." That night, as they discussed the strange events around the campfire, they heard branches breaking in the darkness around the camp. Mark, who went away to investigate, did not return. "We searched for hours," Jason reported. "We used whistles, flashlights, shouted his name. It was like the forest had just swallowed Mark." The next morning, the group found Mark's photography equipment scattered about 200 meters from the camp. There were no signs of a struggle, just his things carefully arranged in a circular pattern. Jason immediately activated his emergency beacon and attempted to contact rangers by radio, but discovered that the equipment had been damaged during the night. The group decided to return to the park's entry point, approximately 15 kilometers away. During the return hike, they discovered that not only had their markings been removed, but official trail signs were also altered or completely missing. Jason's GPS showed that they were straying from the main route, despite following what appeared to be the correct trail. On the 3rd night, Sarah Collins disappeared from her own tent. His sleeping bag was empty, with a small cut in the side. Of the tent, the only evidence of disturbance. "That's when I realized we were being hunted," Jason said. "Someone was deliberately isolating us, confusing our orientation and picking us off one by one." The next morning, as Jason discussed strategy with Ethan and Rebecca, they found something disturbing: an old ranger ID nailed to a tree with a hunting knife. The name on the identification was Raymond Tanner, a former park employee who had been fired 3 years earlier after multiple complaints of hostile behavior toward visitors. Ethan, desperate to find his sister, ignored Jason's warnings and ran into the woods, shouting Sarah's name. It was the last time Jason and Rebecca saw him. With only 2 survivors, Jason made a drastic decision. Instead of following any trail, they would cut straight through the forest, navigating solely by GPS. And the sun. Rebecca, exhausted and terrified, agreed. During his desperate escape, Jason briefly glimpsed a figure in the distance, a tall man wearing what appeared to be a worn-out ranger uniform, carrying a rifle. On the 4th night, while sheltering in A small, natural cave. Jason and Rebecca heard footsteps approaching. Hidden in the shadows, they saw Raymond Tanner pass by, dragging what appeared to be a body wrapped in canvas. He was muttering to himself, Jason recalled. Something about cleaning the park and teaching a lesson. On the final morning, as they tried to reach the main road, Rebecca stumbled upon a hidden trap, a foliage-covered hole that held sharp stakes at the bottom. Her screams alerted Tanner, who quickly approached. Jason, hiding nearby, witnessed Tanner dragging an injured Rebecca away. Following them from a distance, he discovered a rudimentary cabin hidden in an unmapped valley. Around the structure, several personal objects from other hikers were arranged, like trophies. Using the last of his battery, Jason managed to pinpoint the location on his GPS before fleeing toward the main road, where he eventually encountered a patrol of rangers. The ensuing rescue operation found Tanner's cabin and evidence linking him to the disappearance of at least 7 groups of hikers over the previous 3 years. Rebecca was found alive, although seriously injured. The bodies of Mark, Sarah, and Ethan were recovered from shallow pits near the cabin. Raymond Tanner was captured 2 days later, hiding in a cave a few miles from his cabin. During his trial, it was revealed that he had developed a pathological hatred towards tourists after blaming them for his wife's death in a bushfire caused by negligent campers. He turned the park into his personal hunting ground, the prosecutor explained during the trial, using his knowledge as a former guard to manipulate trails and isolate victims. Jason Mercer never returned to Olympic National Park. He now works training trail guides in survival and safety techniques, emphasizing the importance of recognizing signs of human manipulation in natural environments. The last record Maya Chen, a 32-year-old professional photographer, had organized a photography workshop for 4 enthusiasts: couple James and Olivia Thompson, student Ethan Miller, and retired Dr. Susan Wright. The group planned to spend 4 days on the famous Skyline Trail, known for its stunning views of the Canadian Rockies. On the first day, August 14th, the group advanced 5 miles along the trail, setting up camp near Moraine Lake. The weather was perfect, and everyone spent the afternoon photographing the sunset reflected in the crystal-clear waters of the lake. It was during the camp setup that Ethan made an intriguing discovery: a Canon DSLR camera partially buried next to a fallen log, just a few meters from where they had decided to pitch their tents. The camera was in surprisingly good condition, Ethan reported. The protective case was dusty and scratched, but the equipment inside appeared functional. The memory card was still intact. Driven by curiosity, the group connected the camera to Maya's laptop to check the images. What they found was disturbing. More than 300 photos documenting the trip of another group of 5 people who had apparently camped in exactly the same spot 3 months earlier. The first images showed typical scenes from a successful camping trip: stunning landscapes, outdoor, meals, smiles around the campfire. But as they progressed through the photo sequence, the tone changed drastically. Around photo 120, "We noticed something strange," said Maya. The group began photographing unfamiliar footprints around the camp, strange markings on trees, and personal effects that had apparently been moved during the night. Subsequent photos showed the group members visibly tense, often looking over their shoulders. There were several nighttime images showing what appeared to be eyes reflecting flashlight in the darkness of the surrounding forest. The last images were particularly unsettling: a sequence of blurry photos, as if taken in motion, partially showing a tall, thin figure among the trees. The sequence ended abruptly with a completely blurred photo that appeared to show the inside of a tent being ripped from the outside. That evening, as they reviewed their own photos from the day, Olivia noticed something disturbing. In the background of one of the sunset images, partially visible among distant trees, was what appeared to be a figure watching the group. The next morning, the group discovered that some items had been moved overnight. Susan's backpack was several feet from where she had left it, and the layout of the tents looked slightly different from the photos taken the night before. Even more disturbing, they found markings on the trees around the camp. 3 parallel lines deeply carved into the bark, identical to those that appeared in photos from the camera found. Maya decided it was time to end the expedition. The group quickly packed up their belongings and began heading back down the trail, planning to report their findings to the first ranger station. It was during the descent that Ethan, who was walking a few meters ahead, shouted for everyone to stop. On the edge of the trail, partially covered by foliage, there was a men's sports shoe. It was identical to the one used by one of the group members in the photos from the camera found. The group quickened their pace, but the sky quickly darkened as an unforeseen storm approached. Forced to set up camp again, they chose an open clearing, away from tree cover, and organized a shift-based surveillance system. During the early morning, hours during James's shift, he observed movement in the surrounding forest. Using a telephoto lens, he photographed what appeared to be the same tall, thin figure in the found camera photos, moving methodically through the trees. At dawn, the group found a circle of rocks surrounding their camp, something that hadn't been there when they set up their tents. In the center of each stone there was a small mark, 3 parallel lines. Abandoning most of their equipment to gain speed, the group practically ran the last few kilometers to the ranger station, where they reported their findings. A search operation was immediately launched to locate the previous group. Using the photos as a reference, authorities identified the 5 people as a group of amateur photographers from Vancouver who had been reported missing 3 months earlier. 2 weeks later, the search found remains of a destroyed camp and some personal belongings scattered over a wide area, but no sign of the missing. The investigation remains open, with authorities considering everything from wild animal attacks to the possibility of a human predator operating in the region. For Maya Chen and her group, the experience ended their nature photography careers. In remote areas, the images they captured, including those of the mysterious figure in the forest, were included in the investigation file. What's most disturbing, Maya concluded in her statement, was not just the photos we found, but how our own experience began to mirror theirs, as if we were trapped in a cycle they had started. Whoever is next to camp there might end up finding our camera too. Makeshift shelter, the case of Emma and Daniel Harrington has been documented by Police Scotland as one of the most disturbing incidents in the remote Highlands. The events of those 3 days were reconstructed from police records and the testimony of survivors. The young American couple were on their honeymoon, exploring the Cairngorms when they were surprised by an unforeseen severe storm. With temperatures dropping rapidly and visibility reduced by snow and wind, they spotted what appeared to be a wooden cabin approximately half a kilometer away. It felt like a miracle, Emma later reported. We were completely disoriented and hypothermia was starting to set in. The cabin, rustic but well-maintained, looked abandoned. A fireplace with still warm ashes suggested someone had been there recently, but there were no signs of current occupation. The couple found dry firewood, stacked next to the fireplace, and quickly lit a fire to keep warm. There was something strange about the cabin, Daniel recalled. Hunting trophies everywhere, but not just ordinary animals. There were skulls and bones that we couldn't identify. The next morning, as the storm continued, the couple explored the area further. They discovered a locked basement and, in one of the rooms, a disturbing collection of personal belongings, watches, rings, wallets, and identity documents from different nationalities. Before they could process their discovery, they heard footsteps on the porch. A tall, burly man entered, carrying a shotgun and a canvas bag. He introduced himself as Malcolm, the owner of the cabin, appearing surprised to find them. "He seemed almost disappointed to find us awake and alert," said Emma. But he quickly assumed a friendly stance, explaining that he was a hunting guide and that the cabin served as his outpost. Malcolm explained that the storm would last at least 2 more days and offered to share his provisions. Over dinner, he told stories about the region, mentioning previous visitors who had gotten lost in the mountains. "That's when I noticed something disturbing," Daniel reported. He described details about these alleged visitors that exactly matched the belongings we had found in the room. That night, the couple heard sounds coming from the locked basement, something that sounded like a muffled groan. When they questioned Malcolm, he explained that he kept injured animals there for treatment. Suspicious, Emma and Daniel pretended to go to sleep, but planned to escape in the early hours of the morning. While gathering their belongings, they discovered a diary hidden under a loose board on the bedroom floor. In it, Malcolm methodically detailed his manhunts, 14 victims in the past 6 years, all drawn to the cabin during storms. He would deliberately modify trail signs during impending storms, Emma explained, directing disoriented hikers to your cabin. As they tried to escape quietly, Malcolm confronted them in the living room. "The storm is not the only danger in these mountains," he said calmly, wielding his shotgun. "But it's an excellent opportunity to hunt prey that voluntarily comes to my door." What followed was a desperate struggle. Daniel managed to temporarily knock Malcolm down, allowing the couple to escape into the snowy forest. Chased for hours in the storm, they finally found a road and were rescued by a passing motorist. Police found the cabin empty, but the basement revealed horrifying evidence: human remains and a seriously injured man, a German hiker who had disappeared. 3 weeks earlier, Malcolm Fraser was never captured. It is believed he still lives in the remote highlands, possibly in another makeshift hunting post, waiting for the next storm to bring new prey to his doorstep. For Emma and Daniel Harrington, their honeymoon turned into a nightmare. They now work with Scottish authorities on campaigns warning about the dangers of seeking shelter in unmarked huts during storms in the Highlands. "The scariest thing," concluded Emma, "is knowing that there are predators who not only take advantage of our vulnerability, but deliberately create situations where we have no choice but to fall into their traps." What's up, guys? The stories of camping trips gone wrong are chilling even now, aren't they? If you're enjoying these scary stories, how about taking a quick stop and subscribing to the channel? Just click the sign up button below and take the opportunity to leave your like too. This really helps the channel grow and motivates me to continue bringing you more terrifying content like this. It's quick and makes all the difference. Now, shall we get back to our camping horror stories? There's still a lot of fear ahead. 4. Smoke signals Alex. Thompson, a 38-year-old experienced guide, was leading a group of 4 backpackers on an expedition along the remote thoroughfare trail. The group included Sarah Chen, a 34-year-old doctor, brothers Mike and David Peterson, and Rebecca Martinez, a nature photographer. On the afternoon of the second day, July 5th, Rebecca saw a column of smoke rising through the trees, approximately 2 kilometers away. "Initially, we thought it was another group of campers," Alex reported, "but the amount of smoke seemed excessive for a simple campfire, and there was no record of other groups being allowed in that area." Concerned about the possibility of a forest fire, the group decided to investigate. Alex recorded their GPS coordinates and the direction they would go in his travel diary. After walking for approximately 45 minutes, they arrived at a small clearing where they found an apparently hastily abandoned camp. 2 tents were still set up, with untidy sleeping bags inside. A fire was still smoking, fed by green logs purposely placed to produce more smoke than heat. There was an immediately sinister atmosphere, Sarah described. Open backpacks with contents spilled out, half-eaten food on plates, a bottle of water, tipped over, as if people had simply evaporated in the middle of their activities. Mike found a partially burned diary. The readable pages indicated that the camp belonged to a group of 3 people. The last entry, dated that morning, said, "Only someone has been going through our things overnight. We will leave after breakfast." As they examined the site, David noticed something disturbing. There were no footprints leading away from the camp. The only marks on the ground were those of the newly arrived group itself. "That's when I started to feel like we were being watched," Rebecca reported, "that unmistakable feeling of eyes fixed on your back." Alex scanned the surrounding forest and noticed subtle movements among the trees. Around the perimeter of the camp, the group discovered fresh marks on the trees, deep notches forming strange patterns. Some trees had small objects hanging from them, feathers, small bones, and, most disturbingly, what appeared to be a wedding ring. As the sun began to set, Alex decided to abandon the investigation and return to his own camp. That's when they realized they were disoriented. The smoke had intensified, reducing visibility, and Alex's GPS showed coordinates inconsistent with his maps. Forced to set up camp for the night, they chose an elevated spot about 500 meters from the abandoned camp. They established a shift surveillance system with 2 people always awake. During their first watch, Mike and Sarah heard branches breaking in the darkness. Using flashlights, they briefly illuminated what appeared to be a human figure crouched in the bushes, which quickly disappeared into the forest. In the early hours of the morning, during Alex and Rebecca's shift, an object was thrown into the camp perimeter, a small digital camera. When they examined it, they discovered that it contained dozens of photos of the group themselves, taken over the previous day, including images of them sleeping in their tents the night before. At 5:15 a.m., as they prepared to leave, a man emerged from the forest. Tall, with a thick beard and worn camouflage clothing, he carried a hunting rifle. "Welcome to my home," he said calmly. "I'm John Hawkins. You responded to my invitation." The man explained that he had been a ranger in Yellowstone for 12 years, before deciding that civilization was corrupting nature. For 7 years, he had lived in the remote areas of the park, occasionally hunting visitors he considered unworthy. "You have a 2-hour head start," he announced. "After that, I start hunting. Those who survive 3 days earn the right to leave here." The group fled immediately, splitting into pairs as they had planned during the night. David was injured by a hidden trap, a pit with stakes that pierced his leg. Mike stayed to help his brother, while Alex, Sarah, and Rebecca continued. After almost 36 hours of escape, the trio managed to reach an area with radio signal and contacted forest rangers. A rescue operation was mobilized, locating Mike and David. Hiding in a shallow cave, John Hawkins was captured 3 days later, hiding in a network of underground shelters. Investigations revealed evidence linking him to at least 9 unsolved disappearances over the previous 7 years. At their main shelter, authorities found a detailed map marking locations of similar bait camps scattered throughout the region, each strategically placed to attract disoriented or curious backpackers. For Alex and his group, the experience left deep scars. The most frightening thing, he reflected during the trial, is how a universally recognized sign of danger or cry for help, smoke on the horizon, was perversely turned into a trap. He used our very humanity against us. The case of smoke signals has led to an overhaul of safety protocols in remote areas of American national parks, with new warnings about the importance of recording trail routes and approaching unfamiliar campsites with extreme caution. And in isolated areas of Yellowstone, rangers now regularly check remote locations for bait camps, a grim reminder that sometimes the real danger in nature comes not from wild animals, but from those who have chosen the wilderness as their hunting ground. Marked territory. The case of the group of backpackers on the Linville Gorge Trail was documented by the National Park Service as one of the most disturbing incidents in the recent history of Pisgah National Park. The events of those 5 days were reconstructed from search and rescue records and testimonies from survivors. Marcus Reynolds, a 36-year-old experienced guide, was leading a group of 4 backpackers on an expedition through the remote Linville Gorge region. The group included brothers Ethan and Lisa Cooper, environmental photographer Daniel Wright, and biologist Rachel Simmons. On the second day of the trail, May 12th, Daniel noticed something strange in the trees along the way. Markings that didn't correspond to any official trail system. There were 3 parallel lines deeply carved into the trunk, some apparently recent. Initially, we thought they were ancient Native American markings, Marcus reported. The region has a rich history of indigenous trails, and marker trees were common to indicate paths. As they advanced, the markings became more frequent and elaborate. Some trees featured additional symbols, circles, arrows, and patterns that seemed to form some kind of code. Rachel, with her knowledge of forest biology, observed something disturbing. These are not historical markings. Some are less than a month old, considering bark healing. On the 3rd night, camped next to a stream, the group began to feel watched. Strange sounds echoed through the forest, branches breaking at regular distances, like methodical footsteps circling the camp. In the morning, they discovered that someone had been on the perimeter during the night. New markings appeared on the trees surrounding the camp, forming an almost perfect circle. More alarmingly, some of her belongings had been moved or looked through. That's when we realized we weren't alone, Ethan explained. Someone was watching us, studying our movements. Deciding to leave the area, the group accelerated their pace. It was then that they found something disturbing. A tree with photographs pinned to the trunk. They were images of other backpackers, all taken secretly. Some showed people sleeping in tents, others walking unaware along the trail. Further along, they found a small makeshift altar containing personal objects, watches, glasses, pocket knives, that clearly belonged to different people. Some items looked like they had decades of exposure to the elements. That night, during his watch shift, Daniel photographed a distant figure watching the camp. When they enlarged the image, they saw an elderly man with a long beard, wearing clothes made of skins and improvised fabrics. The next morning, Lisa disappeared from her tent. A frantic search revealed only one new marking on the nearest tree. 3 parallel lines with an X in the center. While searching for Lisa, the group found a rudimentary cabin hidden in a rocky valley. Around the structure, hundreds of marked trees formed concentric circles, like an elaborate territorial defense system. That was when they understood the meaning of the markings. They were the territorial limits of someone who had lived isolated in the forest for decades, considering any intruder as a threat to be eliminated. A rescue operation was mobilized when Marcus managed to contact authorities using an emergency beacon. Lisa was found tied up in the cabin, injured but alive. The man, later identified as Thomas Blackwood, had lived in the wilds of Pisgah for more than 30 years after deserting from the army. Investigation revealed that Blackwood had developed a complex system of territorial markings, using techniques learned partly from native tribes and partly of his own creation. He had been responsible for the disappearance of at least 7 people in the region over the decades. The most disturbing thing, concluded Marcus in his testimony, was realizing that we had walked for days through an elaborate system of traps and borders, being observed and evaluated the entire time. The markings were not just signs, they were warnings that we did not know how to read. The marked territory case has led to a review of trail maps in Pisgah, with new guidance for backpackers on how to identify and report unofficial tree markings. And for forest rangers, it served as a grim reminder that even in the most mapped and studied areas, there can be undocumented territory marked only by signs that few know how to interpret. The silent intruder. The case of the group of campers in Borrowdale Valley has been documented by Cumbria Police as one of the most disturbing incidents in the recent history of the Lake District National Park. The events of those 6 days were reconstructed from police records and testimonies from survivors. Emma Lawson, a 29-year-old teacher, had organized a camping trip with 3 friends: her brother James, his girlfriend Olivia, and her work colleague Michael. The group planned to spend a week exploring the remote trails of the Borrowdale Valley, known for its stunning scenery and relative isolation. On the 2nd day of camping, Emma noticed something strange. Her flashlight, which she was sure she had left next to her sleeping bag, was on the other side of the tent. Initially, he attributed it to his own distraction. "I've always been extremely organized," Emma later explained. "I know exactly where I put my stuff, especially on camping trips." The next morning, he noticed that some cereal bars were missing from the food box. When he mentioned this to the group during breakfast, they all assumed that some small animal had invaded the camp during the night. "Probably a smart badger," joked James. "They have been known to steal food from campers," Emma, unconvinced, began to pay more attention to details. On the 3rd night, before going to sleep, he organized his belongings specifically and took photos with his cell phone. In the morning, he confirmed his suspicions. Several items had been subtly repositioned, and more food had disappeared. "Someone has been going through our things," she insisted over breakfast. "It's not an animal, it's a person." The others laughed at his theory, attributing his worry to an excessive imagination fueled by horror stories around the campfire the night before. Michael suggested that she might be sleepwalking, an explanation that Emma found particularly irritating. Determined to prove her point, Emma decided to set a simple trap. He spread a thin layer of flour around his tent and food storage area before sleeping. He also hid his cell phone set to take photos at regular intervals throughout the night. The next morning, he woke up before the others and found exactly what he feared: human footprints clearly visible in the flour. Even more disturbing, photos on his cell phone showed a crouched figure examining his backpacks at 3:17 a.m. When he showed his friends the evidence, skepticism quickly turned to concern. James, a former military man, examined the footprints closely. "They're from a grown man," he concluded. "And by the weight distribution pattern, it knows how to move." Silently, the group immediately decided to change location, moving to a more open area about 2 kilometers away. While hiking, Michael noticed something disturbing: fingerprints in the mud on a nearby slope, as if someone had observed the camp from above. At the new location, they set up a surveillance system in shifts. During her shift, at around 2 a.m., Emma spotted a figure moving through the trees on the outskirts of the camp. It woke James silently, who confirmed the intruder's presence. Using a powerful flashlight, James suddenly illuminated the area where they had seen movement. For a brief moment, they caught the image of a thin man with a thick beard and dirty clothes, who quickly disappeared into the vegetation. The group spent the rest of the night on high alert. In the morning, they decided to end the trip prematurely and return to civilization. During the walk back, they had the distinct sensation of being followed. Approximately 1 kilometer from the parking lot where they had left their cars, they found an improvised camp hidden in a small natural cave. The site contained several items, clearly stolen from other campers: flashlights, cooking utensils, clothing, and a significant amount of packaged food. Even more disturbing, they found a diary detailing observations about several groups of campers, including their own. The author had meticulously noted down their routines, conversations, and even personal characteristics. Emma, red hair, organized, suspicious, wakes up several times during the night, dangerous. When they arrived at the parking lot, they immediately contacted the police. A search of the area revealed that the intruder was Malcolm Reeves, a fugitive wanted for serious assault who had escaped from prison 6 months earlier and had been living in the remote areas of the Lake District ever since. The subsequent investigation found that Reeves had been observing and stealing from campers for months, gradually becoming bolder in his break-ins. In his main hideout, they found evidence linking him to at least a dozen different camps that he had systematically observed and looted. The most disturbing thing, Emma concluded in her statement, was not just knowing that someone was stealing our food, but realizing that he spent hours watching us sleep, learning our habits, studying us like prey. I will never be able to sleep peacefully in a tent again. The case of the silent intruder has led to a review of safety protocols for campers in the Lake District, with new guidance emphasizing the importance of group surveillance systems and immediate reporting of any signs of intrusion, however subtle. And for the region's rangers and police officers, it served as a grim reminder that sometimes danger in wild areas comes not from animals or natural elements, but from human predators who have learned to move silently among unsuspecting visitors, watching, waiting, and choosing their moment. The last photo, Nathan Collins, a 34-year-old landscape photographer, had organized a photography expedition with 4 friends to capture the stunning views of the famous Milford Trail. The group included his sister Megan, couple Jamie and Sophie Wilson, and a recent acquaintance, Adrian Hayes, who Nathan had found on an online photography forum. Adrian seemed perfect for the trip, Nathan explained later. He knew the area well and offered to serve as an informal guide. None of us questioned his presence. On the second day of the trail, the group camped near one of the region's many alpine lakes. During sunset, everyone took hundreds of photos of the mountains reflected in the crystal clear waters. That night, while reviewing his images, Nathan noticed something strange about a series of panoramic photos he had taken throughout the day. In a distant image of the trail, a lone figure seemed to watch the group from afar. Initially, I thought it was another hiker, Nathan said. The Milford Trail is popular even in remote areas. Intrigued, Nathan continued reviewing his photos chronologically. In each subsequent image, the mysterious figure appeared to be closer to the group, although no one noticed his presence at the time. More disturbingly, in the last photos taken before arriving at their current camp, the figure was no longer visible. In the distance, Nathan felt a chill as he realized the implication. Whoever it was had already caught up with the group. Worried, Nathan showed the footage to his sister Megan, who suggested sharing it with the entire group immediately. There's something wrong with these photos, Nathan said, passing his tablet around for everyone to see. Someone appears to be following us from the trailhead. As the group examined the images with increasing unease, Adrian remained remarkably calm. It's probably just another photographer following the same route, he suggested. Nothing to worry about. It was Sophie who made the disturbing connection. Looking more closely at the distant figure and then at Adrian, she noticed unsettling similarities in posture and equipment. Nathan, she asked carefully, when exactly did you meet Adrian? The question hung in the air for a tense moment. Adrian smiled strangely, his expression changing subtly. Interesting that you should ask that now, he replied, his voice losing its previous warmth. I've been watching you for a lot longer than you know. What followed was a shocking revelation. Adrian Hayes wasn't his real name, and he hadn't come across Nathan by chance on the online forum. He had been studying the group for months, creating an online persona specifically to infiltrate the planned expedition. You photographers are so predictable, he explained with disturbing calm. Always looking for the same angles, always camping in the same perfect spots. It makes everything so much easier. When Jamie discreetly tried to reach his satellite phone, Adrian quickly revealed a hunting knife he kept hidden. It wouldn't be wise, he warned. We are a long way from any help. Adrian revealed that he had followed other groups of photographers previously, always following the same pattern, observing from a distance, gradually getting closer, and finally infiltrating the group. "What do you want from us?" Megan asked, her voice shaking. "Authentic experiences," replied Adrian. "Most people just walk through nature, taking photos without really feeling the fear, the vulnerability that our ancestors felt. I provide that experience." Nathan, sensing the growing danger, tried to keep Adrian talking while he mentally worked out a plan. When a sudden storm began to gather over the lake, he saw his opportunity. "We need to protect the equipment," Nathan said, gesturing to the exposed cameras. "Thousands of dollars at risk with this rain." The momentary distraction was enough. When Adrian briefly looked away at the darkening sky, Jamie managed to push him away, creating enough confusion for the group to scatter into the growing darkness. What followed was a night of terror, with the group separated in the forest as Adrian methodically hunted them down. The storm, although dangerous, provided vital cover. Nathan and Megan were able to reach an emergency shelter several miles away, where they encountered other hikers and alerted authorities via emergency radio. A search operation was immediately mobilized, locating Sophie hiding in a rock formation. Jamie was found the next morning, injured but alive, after falling down a ravine while fleeing. Adrian initially managed to escape, but was captured 3 days later, trying to infiltrate another group of hikers. His true identity was Paul Mercer, a former trail guide with a history of obsessive behavior. The investigation revealed evidence in his apartment linking him to the disappearance of at least 2 other groups of photographers over the previous 2 years. His computer contained meticulously organized folders with information on dozens of nature photographers he had tracked through their online posts. For Nathan Collins and his group, the experience ended their photography careers in remote areas. The images they captured, showing the gradual approach of their predator, became training material for rangers and trail guides. "The most disturbing thing," concluded Nathan in his testimony, "was not just discovering that we were being watched, but realizing that we had willingly invited the predator into our group, shared meals with him, and trusted him to guide us. The last photo I took before discovering the truth shows us all smiling around the campfire, including him." And so we come to the end of our 7 horror stories about camping trips gone wrong. So what did you think? Which story gave you the most goosebumps? Will any of them make you think twice before setting up a tent in the middle of the forest? Tell me in the comments which one was your favorite. If you enjoyed this dive into the terrifying world of sinister camps, don't forget to leave a like. This really helps the channel grow and motivates me to keep bringing more scary content like this. And if you are not yet registered, take the opportunity now to sign up and activate the bell.